Hello, class, and welcome to lesson 3. So in this lesson, we'll be going over malware, which continues to be a significant threat. That is chapter 5, um, which goes over, again, the course focuses on Microsoft Windows, but, we can get malware in our phones now and also Linux machines and our servers. And so it's, very important to manage the threat and continually update. So we'll go over that. Then we'll go over group policy, which is chapter 6. And again, it's group policy control, Microsoft Windows, looking at Active Directory and GPOs. And then and I do have some additional resources we'll go over in both malware and group policy. Everybody's doing pretty well in the course. Um, so I appreciate your submissions early, especially to the discussions. If you can submit your discussions early in the week, it gives everybody an opportunity to reply and have a more robust discussion. And feel free to the discussions really gives you the opportunity to look beyond, just what's in the course text and try to bring some more detail to the discussion. So, feel free to go off on a tangent a little bit or do a deep dive in a specific area. That way, we're not all researching the same issue, that way our discussion is more robust. I appreciate, like I said, early discussions and then, breaking down and, an issue or an area of research. So this week, the assignments, we just have the lab assignments also included this Linux file permissions. I'll submit that link in the announcement as well. I'll update that. But the Linux file permissions is really good because we go over, you know, access in Windows. And so Linux, it's not on the final exam, but it is really good, valuable information, especially if you work as a sysadmin or, most of our corporate environments include a plethora of platforms, including Windows, Linux, and Macintoshes that we have to support. So for this week, looking at the Power PowerPoint presentation, um, Chapter 5 is protecting Windows against malware. And the learning objectives for Chapter 5 is to describe threats to Windows and its applications that reside on Windows. And so, like I said, the author focuses on that. And so, we're more focused on our Windows machines as far as this lab goes. But, we also have threats to other platforms that we support, including our cloud platforms. And then to implement security controls to protect Microsoft's Windows and security. Microsoft Windows systems and networks. And, this is just a day-to-day network operating center activity. Some of the key concepts include malware and its purpose, preventing and mitigating malware, and tools and techniques for malware removal. So what is the purpose of malware? Hackers are using malware to either just disrupt our operations, to gather sensitive data and sell it, and to gain access to our systems. Yeah, there's was a huge release recently. I'm not sure if you've heard it on NPR about the release, of over 270 million Social Security numbers. A lot of them are outdated information, but it's very, there's a whole, I encourage you to, research that as you're looking at malware and just the number of attacks. Of course, the target attack 5 or 6 years ago was, widespread and widely known, but, there's attacks happen, almost every day. But, they say, that the author says it was a harmless or experimental pranks, but now, there's organizations out there that, try, try to gain information and access resources that we have and disrupt our operations, which can be very detrimental to our business. I do have a video I'd like you to see on what is malware.
Is your computer acting strange? Do you suspect it's been infected with malware? Let's look at how it got malware, how to get rid of it, and how to protect your computer from getting infected again. But first, what is malware? Malware is malicious software that infects electronic devices. It allows a third party to secretly conduct harmful actions against a computer, server, or network. When this happens, your computer may not perform like it used to. Instead, it may slow down or overheat. An app or program may appear that you don't remember downloading, and programs don't function properly or crash. But how did this happen, you may ask? Malware infects your computer through 3 different routes. One way is through removable media, like a flash drive or external hard drive. If you insert an infected one into your computer, you've now got malware. Because you can't tell if removable media is infected, it's a safe practice to never connect one from friends, family, or coworkers into your computer. Another way for your computer to become infected is through a download from the internet. Downloads include software, apps, music, movies, and free games. To prevent this, only download from trusted sources. Never download pirated files or from suspicious websites and pop-ups. The final way your computer risks becoming infected with malware is if you click on a malicious link or open an attachment in a spam email. A good rule of thumb is if you don't know the sender or the sender's email address looks strange, mark it as spam and delete it. If your PC has malware, here's how to get rid of it. Check out Kaspersky's products. Links in descriptions. Change all passwords in case they were compromised by malware. Update your software, browser, and operating system. If you think your Mac has malware, here's how to remove it. Click on the Activity Monitor app in Launchpad. Look for known Mac malware, such as Mac Defender, Mac Protector, or Mac Security. If you find one of those, click Quit Process before quitting the Activity Monitor. Go to the Applications folder and drag the file into your trash. Empty the trash folder afterward to permanently delete the malware. Make sure your software and apps are up to date. There are several different types of malware you may encounter if you aren't careful. Keyloggers. These tools record keystrokes. Cybercriminals use them to gather passwords, credit card numbers, and financial account information. Worms. These are malicious programs that self-replicate on computers and networks. Trojans are also malicious programs. They're designed to delete, copy, block, or modify data. Ransomware encrypts operating systems or files. Cybercriminals then demand a ransom to get them back. Crypto malware requires a unique key to decrypt the stolen files. Logic bomb. This is a code within software that sets off a malicious function if specified conditions aren't met. Ads. These are the annoying pop-up ads that appear on devices. When clicked on, they can open the door to malware. In the same way, spyware is installed on your device after opening an infected email or through a software bundle without user consent for malicious purposes. Rootkits and bootkits. These give cybercriminals unlimited access to all parts of a computer to steal personal data and financial information, install malware, or use computers in a bootnet. They are hard to identify and remove. Now that you've gotten rid of the malware, how can you protect yourself from another infection? Check out Kaspersky's products. Links in descriptions. Only download apps and software from trusted sites. Research apps and software by reading user reviews and developer descriptions. Check out how many downloads an app has. The more, the better. Check what permissions it asks for to see if they make sense. Keep software, apps, and your operating system updated. Use a secure VPN connection for public Wi-Fi, like Kaspersky Secure Connection. Protect your computer and your peace of mind.
Great. Of course, there's many applications out there or products that we can use to remove malware and detect malware. And depending on the corporation you work for, they're going to use enterprise level applications, or, depending on the size, whether it's small, medium, or large business, what kind of tools that be available to you. And then, of course, on our personal computers, we should be securing that data as well. Making backups is extremely important. We'll go over ransomware, but it's definitely, you don't want to lose your own personal data or have it compromised. Oops. So the types of malware, um, there's viruses and worms. There's also Trojan horses, rootkits, spyware, and ransomware. And the kind of the difference of it is, viruses and worms are spread from one machine to another machine. So if they get inside the network at work, then they can go through and spawn and go to other machines. And just like a virus, um, in real life, how it spreads. And then programs that hide Trojan horses, rootkits, spyware, and ransomware. Those are programs that are meant to not, so the user doesn't know that they reside on their computer. And spyware can be on your computer and just be collecting information and sending it. Um, you know, uh, they use a rootkit to modify programs to hide their presence. And then a Trojan horse masquerades as a useful program. Games are one of the top ways to submit a Trojan horse into a machine, as a person loads the game or another application. And that's the reason why the in the video they were saying, only use trusted sources and checking to see how many downloads are there. Unfortunately, smaller companies just don't have the resources to invest as much into security. Uh, um, it's same thing with like shopping online, to go to reputable sites. And of course, they're not always as secure, as everyone else. You can't just rely, on that company as a blue chip company. We do need multiple layers of protection. We say that over and over again throughout the course. So looking specifically, virus is a program that copies itself and then goes into another program and can infect other computers on the network or other computers via email. So the internet is just a type of network. Um, and then it infects the host program and may cause the host program to replicate itself on other computers. Worm's a little bit different. It's self-contained. It replicates and sends copies of itself to other computers across the network. It may reduce availability of the network band. And the main difference is that a worm does not need a host program to infect. A worm is a standalone program where a virus is inserted into a program. So they're pretty similar, but just a little bit of difference. So make sure you know the difference between a virus and a worm. A Trojan horse is pretty, the name is pretty good in most IT definition. It hides or masquerades as a useful or benign program. And of course, it's from the story then Ned, where they actually used a Trojan horse to enter a castle, uses outward appearance to trick users into running it, and disguised as a program that performs useful tasks but actually hides malicious code. And again, gaming software. My wife works in healthcare and she works with kids and she downloads a lot of games to play with the kids for educational purposes. And I'm frequently, unfortunately, I'm just totally wiping her whole machine and starting over. And she has a machine just for, the purpose of using it for games with kids. And I'm surprised how, how many Trojan horses and malware is included in a lot of software that she uses or tries to use. Rootkit is a type of malware that modifies or replaces one of the existing programs to hide the fact that the computer has been compromised. Commonly modifies parts of the operating system to conceal its traces of its presence. And once installed, it provides the attacker with access to the compromised computer. And it's this is one of the most difficult to detect and remove. And once somebody has access to your machine, then they can gain admin access rights and um, in a network at an enterprise level, it can be very harmful, and even to your own machine, personally, can be harmful. That's the reason why we want to do multiple layers and continue scanning, to try to find these malware. Spyware is very common. It covertly collects information without the user's knowledge or permission, and it can just reside on a machine and continue to reside. It's information collected can be sensitive personal information such as their password, credit card numbers, social security numbers, and it can track, the keyboard use. And so, although on the screen you see that the numbers are masked out, it can actually, capture this data. And it's commonly used by aggressive marketers, um, and it piggybacks on legitimate programs. And so companies will use this, to gain marketing information, um, which can be a little bit benign, but it's, if they're capturing your detailed personal information like social security number, it can be very scary. Ransomware is a malware that limits the use or limits access to the data on the computer, and normally encrypts important files and then makes them accessible to the user or the organization. And then the attacker demands payment to restore access, usually through some type of digital currency, and they're overseas. And just paying the ransom doesn't guarantee that you get the data back. That's the reason why doing data backups is extremely, extremely important. And that way, I tell people frequently that with your personal computer, you should be able at any time just to throw that computer away. Or, you're not, but you consider that if you left it out in your car and it fell out the door and somebody ran it over, what would you do at that point? And that's how you should consider your data. So you should have your data appropriately backed up. And you can use USB drives or DVD or CD-ROMs, or better yet, have a cloud backup system. And there's plenty of free ones now with Google and AWS, where you can have your data and all your pictures, all your personal data like resumes backed up to the cloud. However, malware spreads is opening emails, open up documents, open up any application, usually over the network. I know in the video they showed, a lot of USBs. We don't use removable media as we once did. Our internet, our networks are so much better than they were in the past. We really got to watch for, social media abbreviated links. People access those PDF files, or a vector now that we really got to be concerned about. So trusting your source of where you get the information, and and then scanning the any new documents before you open them. And I did have how easy to get, now just how easy it is on Google, on the internet, how quickly you can get malware. So I want to show you this video.
Today we're going to do a live experiment, so we're going to do some searches and we'll see if we can find malware. I'm going to start off with something easy. I'm going to search for CS2 cheats download free. Now, as you can tell, that's a really bad combination of words, so let's see what we get. So we have a couple of sites, and then we have videos. And this one has a nice free download in all caps, so it must be the legitimate one. And apparently it's also undetected and safe. In fact, it's so safe that apparently it shows you how to turn off real-time protection, cloud protection for Windows Defender before you download it. But of course, if we take a look at the description of this video, and keep in mind, this was the top result when I did this search. It's the #1 video that showed up. It has a link to Mediafire, file hosting website, and then, of course, it has a password. Anytime a download has a password associated with it, it typically means it's malware. The reason there's a password is so that the archive itself can't be scanned. But of course, if we go here and download it, this is almost certainly going to be an info stealer malware. I've made several videos in the past showing you how this malware works, so that wasn't too hard at all. Let's try again. This time, we're going to search for something very different and very harmless. So let's say I just want a cave wallpaper, and we have some images, but the top result is Wallpaper Cave, which is a popular wallpaper website. Now, all of us might want to change our desktop wallpaper, so this is a very common site, and this is one of the top results when you search for anything related to wallpaper, so it's safe to assume a lot of people are going to click on things here. Let's say we like this image. Ooh, immediately we have what looks like a download link here, file size 487 kilobytes, full version, and you might think this is the actual wallpaper and click on it. And of course, it leads you to a third-party adware website, but I'm kind of curious as to what this actually is. So we're going to go ahead with the download in this case, because I don't really know if this is an info stealer or if it's just adware. So it's a 4.2 megabyte file. If we open it, it does have a signature, but it's a strange developer. Let's go ahead and run it and see what it does. Oh, and it takes over our screen. That's not a good sign. I thought screen locking was a thing of the past, but as you can see, now I have no control over my desktop, and I'm kind of forced into this Let's Start button. Aha! If you click the next Accept button, which is the most logical thing to do for most people, you agree to set your default search to Buddy Find Search and consent to its terms and privacy policy. So if we click this button, it's probably going to download a bunch more adware, and it's also going to change our search engine and browser settings. So we are perpetually going to be bombarded with adware in the future. So now if we go back and do a simple search through our browser,
you can sell this $5 spatula on Amazon and compete with hundreds of other spatula sellers.
We're somehow on yahoo.com, but I did see a redirect from the BuddyFind website, which is probably tracking all of our search queries and selling it to China. So that's great, 2 for 2. So we managed quite a lot with just 2 Google searches. Now I know what you might be thinking. Those are some odd search queries. I'm not going to do those searches. Plus, I'm not going to download applications. The only software I really need to download on my system might be my GPU drivers and maybe OBS Studio. Well, here's some good news for you. You're not going to be left out. There've been several campaigns where malware authors essentially buy ads on Google to replace top searches. So for example, if you search for AMD graphics drivers or something like that, you're going to see a result that kind of looks like AMD drivers. You can see the actual URL is www.amd something, and the rest of the description looks exactly the same, but actually this is a malware website which again is going to install an info stealer on your computer if you run whatever driver that they give you. Here's a similar result for Blender, a popular 3D animation software. And if you take a look at the website that these ads lead to, they look just like the legitimate website. They're exactly the same because they're pretty much copy pasted. The only difference is the download link, and even the setup programs often look exactly the same, and they're also pretty large in size. You can see this installer is almost 700 megabytes, and the way they do that is they actually fill in a lot of junk data inside the application. They may even have a nice GUI with the setup, but in the background, of course, they're going to run some kind of command prompt application that's actually doing the info stealing. Try to download this on your new laptop, and boom, all of a sudden, all your online accounts, including your YouTube, is hacked. Oh, and I did make a video about the OBS Studio incident, and that was almost a year ago. So if you search for OBS, you would get these sites like obsstreaming.site as an ad in Google. And if you opened it, then I believe I should have this on video. Yep, you get a website like this, which looks very similar to the actual open broadcasting software website, but the setup you download is malware. And when I investigated this using Hexdump, you can see we basically have a string of zeros filling up the rest of the data beyond the info stealer bit. So despite all of this talk from many, including me, that the malware landscape has changed, a lot of attacks today they are targeted, while that is true, a lot of people still get infected, just like in the Windows XP days, by doing a simple Google search. It's going to be very easy to download one of these InfoStealer packages and get some kind of remote access Trojan or InfoStealer on your computer. So make sure you like and share this video to people who think that this is no longer a thing or may not realize why an application in a password protected archive is almost certainly malware. Now, I was making a video about sophisticated targeted attacks earlier, and I accidentally stumbled upon an adware website and realized that while I'm saying most people don't get malware by clicking on random links today, it just happened to me. So that's why I made this video. Hope you found it helpful. And now to our sponsor. This video.
Great. Yeah, so malware is still out there, and it's very easy, unfortunately, to get your machine infected with malware. So we have to be ever vigilant on both with our personal data and then also at work in the workplace. So we use this through anti-spyware and antivirus software to detect and mitigate types of malware. The antivirus focuses on the virus and the worms and the Trojan horses, and it may also address rootkit and spyware, but there's also anti-spyware software that that detects and uses anti-spyware software products to ensure spyware is detected. Let me show you. Hang on just a second. Sorry. Then there's antivirus software methods. Two common methods are using heuristics, signatures, known signatures, which is, as a malware is detected, each application has its own signature. And so our software can look for those signatures and detect either that signature or similar signatures, and then also using heuristics. So that's malware's unique set of instructions is a signature, and heuristics is a practice of identifying malware based on previous experience. So some techniques is to install anti-malware software, enable real-time protection options, keep the malware software up to date, and we should keep all our applications up to date, run frequent scans, isolate and detect the malware, and periodically review and update security policies. And of course, it's a little bit dated, but it says approximately, a third of a million new viruses, Trojan, and malicious files are processed detection technologies daily. And I can tell you, we use web application firewall in our e-commerce retail site, and we literally have thousands and thousands of attacks a day. So there's plenty of bad actors out there. It's a worldwide global network. Most of our networks are connected to be able to do business, so we're constantly being bombarded. And they use automated tools now. With AI, it's much easier to do a lot of things to technology, and one of those things is creating malware. So just a week-old signature database is now out of date. So we need, daily updates and daily scans. A zero-day attack is actually exploiting an unknown vulnerability. Its malware's actions have not been noticed, and the vulnerability has not been discovered. Malware has been identified, but no fix available. Maintaining malware-free environment. Again, installing our anti-malware software, and we can use multiple versions or have it in multiple locations. We should have it the egress point of our network. Have our shields run continuously. We should be checking all our email messages locally before as they're delivered onto our machine, and then on the email server, checking social media messages, looking at web traffic, looking at all our network traffic, so not just on our machines, but looking at it on the network level. Scanning and auditing for malware, we should do periodically scans, and and it opens the files and searches them for malware, and looking for our malware signatures. So again, just continually looking at our malware. This is our last video, but it's from a hacker's point of view and just real world how somebody can get into malware, and the use of malware, even in the States, the chances are they may get caught, but it's not, unfortunately, it's not too difficult to create malware programs and start infecting a network.
To try and teach you something a little bit about malware. And in this video, I'm a bad actor that has recently gotten into mining cryptocurrencies. However, the system I have right now is not ideal for crypto mining. However, I know if I had multiple systems working for me as a group, then that would be way more efficient. Unfortunately, I don't have the resources to buy all of those systems, but why would I need to buy them if I could just use other people's systems? And so what I'll do is I'll have a malware infect those systems and have them all use resources for me to mine cryptocurrencies. Now, how do we go about that? Well, one thing to consider is that we want systems with good GPUs. And which kind of demographic has the best GPUs? Gamers. Luckily, I also just graduated from university and I have all of my former engineering classmates' emails. And I know that a vast majority of engineers are all gamers. So boom, I have my targets. Now, what kind of malware would I use to do something like this? I know there's everything out there from viruses to worms to Trojans, but what we actually described here is considered a botnet, to where there's multiple infected systems working for me under one controlled priority, and this is not known to the owners of these systems, so it's working in the background. And after a quick Google search, I found some botnet code on GitHub that was listed for educational purposes, and luckily it's perfect for what I'm trying to do. So we have the malware. How do we get it onto our victim systems? Now this part's going to take a little bit of social engineering. For this, we know that the victims are all engineering students. And so what I'll do is I'll hide the malware in a PDF file that seemingly contains pages to a textbook for one of the required classes. And then I'll create various email accounts with names similar to that of the professors for that class and construct emails that sound friendly, like, hey, hope you're having a good summer, look forward to seeing you in the fall. Here is the required textbook for this specific class. I know that textbooks can get pricey, so here's the PDF. And then if a student downloads the PDF and opens it, then the botnet code will start to install itself and start using the computer's resources in the background. So if I repeat this process for all of the major classes, then now I have thousands of potential victims. So I send out the emails, and sure enough, I start getting bots to show up on my botnet. The crypto mining operation has begun. Soon, however, one of my victims realizes that they cannot run their games without severe performance drops. And so they get a malware protection service to scan their device. And since I found my code online, the protection software was easily able to recognize it and remove it from their device. Then later, another student who already had malware protection on their device had the service automatically scan the PDF before they downloaded it. And sure enough, it spotted the malware and notified them. And then the student notified the school about it. And sure enough, my mining operation became to deteriorate as more and more students were removing it from their devices and preventing other students from downloading it in the first place. Then one smart student in particular knew about the malware, found that it was on their device, and then tracked me down by analyzing the device and the bot's connection to the botnet and found me fairly easily through that. Needless to say, it did not work out for me. So, some general advice I'd give for everyone is one, to keep your devices updated. There's always known vulnerabilities coming out, and so keeping your devices updates helps mitigate the risk of people exploiting vulnerabilities that have just come out. Next, use protection. Use protection software. Use malware protection software. And last, don't be a bad guy. Don't be a bad guy. If you're going to be a bad actor, know what you're getting yourself into. And so if you're going to take away anything from this video, know that malware is malicious software. 2, follow the advice. And 3, don't go downloading files and executing them without knowing the source.
Thanks for watching. If you
All right, great. Yeah, so good advice, but it's just amazing how easy it is to start spreading malware. So tools, techniques are antivirus or anti-malware software support. And there's a Microsoft's malicious software removal tool that we'll use in the lab. Some of the best practices is do frequent media scans, use software shields, use a signature database, and update it. Use restricted software installation policy, especially at work, not allowing, anything but approved software to be installed. And you may have to implement this in your own house as well, or implement it on yourself, and ensure that only reputable software, you're using reputable software. So restricting downloads, restricting removable policy as far as USBs. I know a lot of businesses now don't have USBs or allow USBs to be connected to machines, which you can manage in the GPO, which we'll talk about in the next chapter. Limiting web browser functionality. Many businesses do this, especially financial businesses, where you actually can even download part of the internet or certain sites and have them maintained in your network, instead of allowing a request to go outside your network. Making sure you're not in a privilege mode or an admin mode when you're doing any kind of work. So again, installing the antivirus, anti-spyware software. I know we said it many times. Enable scanning using signature database. Doing a quick scan before doing any installs and after an install. Enable boot time virus checking, removing admin rights, applying patches not just to the malware software, but all your software. Educating your users, on the importance of being vigilant. Blocking outbound network connections that are not needed, establishing an incident response capability. So what do we do, if we do have a malware infection or a virus going across our network? Backing up our files, like I said, you should really consider, what would happen if that machine you're working on right now and watching this video, if it was gone right now, what would you do? Could you get to your files and have appropriate backwards? So in summary, we discussed malware and its intended purpose, that we want to avoid it, and how to prevent and mitigate malware. And we looked at tools and techniques. And like I said, the lab will you'll use the Windows malware removal tool and look at some antivirus software. So the next chapter 6 is best practices, and looking at Windows group policy and processes. It's a little more detailed on what you would do at the network operating system, as a security administrator, maintaining GPOs and maintaining Active Directory, is at the heart of what most entry-level security professionals do if you haven't done it in the past. So we'll look at describing the information system security and the inherent security features in Windows. We'll look at GPOs and group policy objects and how to be managing them. So a group policy is a central location for settings. It defines and applies general security configuration changes to one or more computers. Can be stored in a group policy object. And it's how we manage multiple computers instead of doing local policies that we'll see. Just have a couple videos I'd like you to watch on GPOs. It's a real in-depth day-to-day management.
From itflea.com, and in this lesson, you're going to learn what group policy is and what it is used for. Group policy is a tool used by system administrators to quickly and easily make configuration changes to users and computers within Active Directory. With group policy, you can implement security configurations across your domain quickly and easily. You can do things like restrict certain users from logging into certain computers, allow only certain users to access certain files, give specific users or all users a specific desktop background, or deploy software to your domain workstations. Group policy is a must-have skill if you want to be a Windows Server administrator or a systems administrator, so do not skip over this section. One thing to keep in mind is that you cannot understand group policy without also understanding Active Directory. So if you not understand what Active Directory is or how to use it, you may want to learn that before proceeding on with this lesson. Now, group policy works by applying GPO or group policy objects to the OU structure that you've created in Active Directory. A group policy object contains configuration settings for both users and computers. When a GPO is applied to an OU, the settings configured in the GPO are applied to the users and computers that are within that OU. You can also configure GPOs to only apply to certain objects by defining the security filtering. The most common and default choice is the authenticated users group, which is basically any valid user or computer within Active Directory. GPOs are applied recursively, and this means that the settings will also be applied to all sub-OUs beneath the original OU that the GPO was applied to. Now, to start group policy, you need to open Server Manager and select Tools, and we're going to look for Group Policy Management. Once the console loads, you'll need to expand the forest itflea.com by clicking the arrow. Now you will see Domains, Sites, Group Policy Modeling, and Group Policy Results. The Domains folder contains all the domains that are underneath the forest. The Sites folder contains all of your sites that you may have configured through Active Directory sites and services. In short, this is used when you have servers that are physically in a different location, like a different building, city, or even country. The Group Policy Modeling and Group Policy Results are both tools that can be used to troubleshoot issues with group policy. Now let's expand the Domains folder, and then let's expand itflea.com. From this view, you can see a similar view to that of Active Directory. Note that you cannot see any of the Active Directory containers, like users for example, but we can see the OU that we've created, and we can see the domain controller's OU. Now, directly beneath itflea.com, we have the default domain policy. As the name implies, this GPO comes by default when a new domain is created. Since it's directly underneath the domain, it will apply to all the Active Directory objects beneath the root domain. So this GPO not only applies to everything at the root level here, but everything in our itflea OU, everything in our administrators OU, and our domain users OU. Notice that we cannot see actual Active Directory objects, so we can't see users in this view. We can only see the group policy objects that have been applied to these OUs, which right now is just the default domain policy. The Group Policy Objects folder contains all the GPOs that are inside your domain, whether they're currently in use or not. So here we can see the default domain policy is listed and the default domain controller policy. If we look here under the domain controller OU, we can see that that GPO is listed here. And again, this is just a list of every single GPO that you have in your domain. Even if it wasn't in use, it would still be listed here. WMI filters allows you to add specific rules of when a specific GPO should be applied or not. For example, you could only apply a particular GPO if the computer was using an operating system of Windows 7 or newer. The Starter GPOs folder is used when you want to import or export GPOs for distribution to other environments. So that's an overview of the Group Policy Management console. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. There's so much that you can do with group policy. I look forward to teaching you more about it in the next.
All right, yeah, that's a good overview from itflea. So group policy, we have one administrator. We can put the group policy in our Active Directory, and he is right. If you don't have experience with Active Directory and LDAP services, it's a good time to go back and review LDAP and Active Directory and how it works. But anyway, instead of managing each desktop or laptop as we used to many years ago. Now, we can do a group policy objects and it'll apply to many users and many machines. So it just makes it super way easier to manage, and we're not managing on a person-to-person basis. We're managing by groups. Some of the GPOs or group policy settings is password policy, account lockout policy, verbosis policy, audit policy, user rights assignment, and security options, such as, having smart cards. And so, how often you have to change your password, the requirements, age, history, etc., when you get locked out of your account. All those are managed through group policies. Some more group policy settings include event logs, restricted groups, system servers, registry, and file systems. So, as system administrators or security administrators, we work with the organization to determine these policies, then we implement it in GPOs. So then you can link the GPOs to specific users or a group of users, and users who log in from Active Directory have the GPOs linked to their user accounts. And we usually, again, we don't do it by user, we'll do it by teams usually. And you can look at the organizational structure to find the team. So, typically you'll have a different group for HR, you'll have a different group for sales, you'll have a different group for, your front end staff, such as cashiers. HR people need access to different systems, and then you have system admin, you know, maybe an elevated privilege user group, so you can create different groups in your organization. And so we use GPOs to find and use to conform our security policy. It allows management to meet security responsibilities to ensure there's no gaps in our security policy. Management must ensure the security of the organizations, including information. And then as IT professionals, we implement those security policies, which are granted by management. So, we would just want to stay out of the business that IT is making the decision on what people can access and what they can do with their machines. That's an executive decision. IT is just the one that implements the security controls based on management's approval. Our group policy definition satisfies our security policy goals, and it's not arbitrary. And the primary goal is to ensure that we don't leave any gaps in security. That's what our hackers are looking for. They're looking at holes in our security. That's the reason why we use multiple layers and do a defense in depth and try to always review our policies and validate them. Making group policy 3-step process: examine the GPO settings that already exist, identify elements that do not already exist in the default template, and then create new GPOs. And so normally we want to create new GPOs and instead of modifying the ones that already exist. So just our GPOs are the one you have locally on your own machine. You have site GPOs defined for the AD for the specific site. And so, like the video was saying, we can have multiple sites in an organization. For example, I work in a Southwest Florida, but we also have a site in Georgia, and we have a site in New Jersey. And there are some assets that we want our people in Florida to be able to access, in Florida, and the other sites don't need access to it. Then we have our domain-wide GPOs and our entire organization GPOs. The registry maintains, they include the HKCU and the HKLM, the local machine, and the current user is a database that stores the configuration settings. Whoops. And you'll do this in the lab, but you'll go into the locus group policy editor, and then you can change the settings in your own machine or look at your local group policy. And you could do this, especially if you're at home and you wanted to manage some of these for your spouse or for the kids in your house, but you can change some of these locally. So, but type GPOs in Active Directory lets you centralize the security rules instead of working on machine by machine basis. And then, like I said, when users log into Active Directory, they'll get these group policies attached to their user ID. So you can create and edit, import and export, copy and paste, backup and restore, and search for GPOs and create reports on GPOs with the group policy management console, which we'll be doing in the lab. Here's a look at the group policy management console, and the password GPO is selected. And so you can see it's all, GUI based in the lab. So, a lot of it is self-explanatory when you're looking at the rules. So the Windows stores the AD GPOs on the domain controller, and that way when you log in the Active Directory through a DC or a domain controller, the GPO is attached to your user ID. And then every 90 minutes to 120 minutes, domain controllers send new or updated GPOs to remote computers and apply them. GPOs in the policy folder. Just an example of that, the couple of screens that you'll be doing in the lab. And we're selecting the GPOs. Designing, deploying, and tracking GPOs controls. We would use the GPOs application order, security filters, and then the WMI are the Windows Management Instrumentation filters. The application order, remember that how we saw a few screens ago, it's local, site, domain, and organizational. And we could have conflicting policies, so their Windows applies them in that order. So we should design them in that order in mind. So any global GPO settings should go on the organizational unit because it's the last one applied. First, your local, that's really like when you log in, you have more rights, and then as GPOs are applied, your site rights are applied, then domain, then organization, which makes sense because your organization, is across your entire organization. So identify settings to force for all computers, define the GPO settings, and link to GPO level containers. And then assuring that it's realistically resets the organizational structure. Again, like I said, that's, you can almost break out your org chart and look at how your GPO should be set. Windows supplies GPOs to computers and users in container by default, and users and OU inherit GPOs for that OU by default. And you can change that behavior with security filters if you want the OU GPO to apply only to some computers or users. So we can provide exceptions to specific users. And then you can see here where we're selecting the object, and then from the location, and then entering the object name. And then you can check names. So if they're in Active Directory, you should be able to find them. The WMI is the infrastructure Windows uses to maintain exchange management operations data. WMI filters provide more control over where the GPOs apply. You can create the filters for each domain and link that filter to one or more GPOs. And here's another example of WMI filters. Deploying group policy. Like I said, it's distributed and applied every 90 minutes or so, a couple hours. So it just can take some time to go across the entire network and hit each domain controller. But you can use the group policy update tool to provide the ability to force users to log off and then have the settings apply when they log back in. Couple auditing managing tools. We have the group policy inventory that can be downloaded from Microsoft and provides the inventory list of GPOs and other settings, and the resultant set of policy RSOP, which is included in Windows. And so it shows GPO settings and how they apply to a specific computer. Looking at some best practices, we have we want to be able to define OUs for that reflect our organizational functional structure, create OU GPOs, organizational level for controls required in your security policy, use meaningful names for our GPOs. We want to make it easy, to go back and edit, modify them, and understand what they are without, digging into them. Deploy GPOs in a test environment is a tremendous idea before putting them into production. Using security filters and WI filters to restrict settings when necessary. Always back up our GPOs in case there's any issues. And remember, there's a set up like they're stored like a database, and there can be issues. And don't modify default policies. Instead, create new GPOs. And did have one more video I wanted to show you before, just going over a quick summary. Oops.
I hate to tell you, just do something like check a box somewhere, and then that was the willpower box. And then from that point forward, you would no longer do what you're trying to stop doing. Well, fortunately, we do have something like that in Windows, because there are certain things in Windows that you shouldn't do or that you don't want your users to do. And all they have to do is click a box, and within seconds, they can't do that anymore. And that, my friends, is something we call group policy. Now, even though the word group is there, it doesn't really have much to do with groups. Yes, security groups are involved, but you don't right-click on a security group and apply a group policy to it or something like that. These are really policies that have, really, there's thousands of settings. There's, last I looked, there was over 3,000 settings, and I know they've added to them since then. It's been a while since I looked, but there's at least 3,000 settings that can be configured in this thing. And so, as a result, what is group policy? It's a way of managing, a central way, and that's very important, central way of managing user and computer environments. And when I say central, that's very important, because you see, we can actually configure what we call a local policy on individual computers. Here I'm on a Windows 10 computer, and I can just go to gpedit.msc, and that opens up a console here. The settings I'm going to show you here only apply to this one computer. That's why it says right up here at the top, local computer policy. Now, what kind of settings could I configure here? I'm going to show you some examples, or in the slide here in a moment, but let's say that one of the things that we want to prevent people from doing is to just go to control panel, because there's so many settings in there that you can control things with, right? Control panel. Okay, so there it is. And this is kind of the old-fashioned way of doing it, I guess, but in a lot of ways, a lot of people still prefer going here as opposed to going to the settings item. It seems to me that's harder to find what you want. But there's all kinds of stuff we could get into here that maybe we shouldn't get into, that could cause a problem, especially if you're an average user, not an administrator, okay? So if we wanted to prevent people from getting into that, how would we do that? One of the ways we could do that would be go into the user configuration here in this local policy, and then go down into administrative templates. Now, administrative templates are mostly, really all, registry settings. So when I select a setting there and enable it, disable it, whatever setting I've decided to do, then that really makes a registry change. It usually flips a bit in the registry there. So if I go to control panel here, I can say prohibit access to control panel and PC settings. Let's actually test that. If I go to right click here and go into settings, notice that I can access settings here as well as the control panel, which I just showed you. So if I go into this, I can enable that. Now, what does that enable? If you look at it, let's look at it again. Prohibit access to control panel and PC settings. You have to read this carefully, because what is it enabling? It's enabling the prohibition here. So in other words, it's preventing me from being able to access control panel or the settings. And if you get a little confused with that sometimes, the help is excellent here. I used to know some people that participated in writing all the help system here. They're really sharp, and they're usually very, very clear here. So if you're not quite sure what it's going to do if you click enabled or disabled or whatever, just look at the help. It's really very helpful. So now I've enabled prohibiting access, and let's take a look at what happens next. If I go to, again, control panel, and just type control and try to access it, can't do it. Because guess what? Some administrator has prevented me from being able to do that. In this case, it's myself. Then if I try to go into the system settings here, like by right-clicking on the start menu and going to settings, it just kind of blinks at you, and then nothing happens. It just says, did I click it? Oh, I thought I clicked it. What happened? Let me try it again. There it goes. Now, but nothing happens. Oh, there it goes away. So it just kind of pops open for a moment, and then it just disappears. Now, as great a setting as that is, what else have I done here? If you think about it, yeah, I'm logged on as an administrator here. Let me show you. I'm logged on as, who am I logged on as? Phoenix Admin 01. And if I go into my settings here, excuse me, a command prompt that is, and I do a who am I all, what's my privileges here? Look, I am a administrator. I'm a local administrator. I am a domain admin. I am an enterprise admin. I pretty much have full rights over everything except for this one computer where I can't even get into control panel now. And that, my friends, is why we generally don't want to edit local policy, because it applies to everyone. Now, there's a way around that, which I'm not going to get into right now, but you can adjust settings there so that it doesn't apply to a specific group, such as the local administrator security group. But the better way to do that is to use group policy instead of local policy. And before I forget what I've done here, let me go back in here and re-enable this before I lock myself out of everything. Notice, by the way, that I went to not configured as opposed to enabled. There's also this disabled setting. If I choose not configured or disabled, those will have the same net effect right now. And we will get into those settings a little bit more on what they mean. But the basic idea here for right now, for our immediate remedy, is to not choose enable.
Okay, I just wanted to show you, some of that and how quickly you can change these settings. And so GPOs, like I said, it's just a common test. We use group policies because we don't want to manage security at the user level. You can imagine large scale organizations that have 20,000 employees or 100,000 employees. GPOs definitely make way more sense, even for an organization that just has a couple hundred employees. And then we should always audit, manage your group policy, including making backups, creating new group policies, and and always ensuring that they meet our management, our executives' expectations as far as access and password procedures and all the things that we can manage with GPOs. So hope you enjoyed this week. I look forward to our discussions. Like I said in the beginning, feel free to expand the discussions out. Oh, there's not a discussion this week. It's just the two labs. Like I said, then you also have the Linux file permissions that you can look at. We go over a little bit about that. It's how we maintain access in the Linux world, although we do, also connect to LDAP services. So this is more at a file level on a Linux server. Anyway, have a great week and continue to keep up the good work.